As I mentioned last night, just days before the midterm elections, President Biden trekked a few blocks from the White House to Union Station to deliver a speech on democracy. And it was a bizarre and often rambling address. And in this, the president did his best to turn the attention of Americans away from his failed policies and create yet another boogeyman, anti-democracy forces that only he can stop. Well, join me now to discuss this and more is Congresswoman Vicky Hartzler. She is a member of the House Armed Services Committee and the House Agriculture Committee. She represents the 4th Congressional District of the state of Missouri. Congresswoman Hartzler, welcome back to Washington Watch.
It's good to be here, Tony. Thank you.
First, I want to get your reaction to the president's speech last night. He spoke about dark forces. Who do you think he's referring to?
Well, he's trying to divert attention away from his failed policies that are going to cost Democrats the House of Representatives and probably the Senate as well. He knows he has nothing to run on, so he's trying to grasp at straws and to attack Republicans. Certainly, he's come up with this new catchphrase, MAGA Republicans or Ultra MAGA. It's ridiculous, and I don't think the American people are going to buy it.
You know, Vicky, many of your colleagues that have spoken out about that speech last night called it dark, they called it divisive. I think it's dangerous. I think what the president is doing, he's conflating all of these things. He conflated this attack on Paul Pelosi with January the 6th, with conservative Republicans. I think the president is pushing this nation to a very dangerous point.
Well, that's right. And certainly election integrity is not voter suppression. And he's trying to conflate just because we believe that a vote should matter, that is dangerous when it takes a voter ID, a photo ID in order to get a tattoo, go into a bar, to get on an airplane. I mean, that is very, very reasonable. And he's the one that's actually being very dangerous, as you point out, he and the Democrats, for not decrying true violence that occurred in the summer a while back. And then with Justice Kavanaugh, he doesn't have the Department of Justice out there arresting and prosecuting individuals who are breaking the law and not condemning Chuck Schumer when he openly said and called for violence against the justices and said, you're going to reap the whirlwind if you do this. And those are truly concerning statements made by Democrats, and yet President Biden chooses not to decry those things. And so that is very, very concerning. But I believe Republicans are going to get out in mass force next week because we recognize that it's President Biden's policies who run this country. We have an open border. We have energy that people can't even afford to put gas in their car anymore. There's record amount of drugs coming across. I mean, you name it, this president and this party has a checklist of how to run America, and they're going down that checklist every day, implementing disastrous policies. And it's up to us as citizens to get out and vote and to take back our country and to stop this train wreck. And I believe the American people will.
Vicky, I want to play, you mentioned something about voter suppression, and the president brought that up last night, saying MAGA Republicans are suppressing vote. I'm going to play 2 clips. I want to play clip number 5 and number 7. So play clip 5 and then play clip 7.
The extreme MAGA element of the Republican Party, which is a minority of that party, as I said earlier, but is this driving force, is trying to succeed where they failed in 2020, to suppress the right of voters and subvert the electoral system itself. That means denying your right to vote and deciding whether your vote even counts. Once again, we're seeing record turnout all over the country, and that's good. We want Americans to vote.
So how can those two things both be true? If MAGA Republicans are succeeding in suppressing voter turnout, but yet all of the early voting records are being shattered in many places because so many people are voting. So, in fact, in states like Georgia, where he criticized the reform efforts that brought confidence back into the electoral system, how can those two statements be true?
Well, they're not. They're contradictory. As you point out, the record amount of people voting shows that there is no voter suppression. And certainly efforts to try to make sure we have election integrity, such as photo ID, is not suppression. It is safeguarding our democratic process. And like I said, you can't get on an airplane without showing your photo ID. You can't get a tattoo, buy cigarettes as a young person, go into a bar. I mean, it's just commonplace. And so it's laughable that Republican efforts in some states promoting voter ID, he's calling suppression. But as you point out, there is no voter suppression. People are coming out of record amounts, and I believe we will prevail. And if anything, it's the Democrats who are rejecting the outcomes. He likes to talk about Republicans saying, well, they're not accepting the results of elections. Well, look at Stacey Abrams. She still has not conceded her 2018 Georgia governor's race. And here she is running again. And so it's just ridiculous. Like I said, the president is just grasping for straws, trying to come up with something to combat and to cover up the massive failures of his administration, as well as the huge defeats that he is going to see next week.
Vicky, I want to ask you a question. A question I'm asked often is it not frustrating when you hear, the president talking about people who are silent in the face of political violence, people denying the elections? You just pointed out Stacey Abrams, she's not alone. I'm going to play a clip a little bit later that even Joe Biden denied the outcome of the 2016 election. But they're saying, they're projecting onto others the very things that they are doing.
Oh, it is very, very frustrating. And the Democrats do that all the time. They blame Republicans for what they're doing themselves. Even now, they're trying to say that Republicans are going to cut Social Security and Medicare. That is an old argument Democrats have been using for years. When I was a state representative and running for re-election back in the 90s, my Democratic opponent sent out a flyer saying that I was going to cut Social Security, which is laughable. A state, that's a federal issue. State
Right.
representatives don't even vote on that. So, like I said, they're just pulling out their old tricks, throwing everything that they can at this electorate and hoping that the American voter will be ill-informed and will buy this the lies. And I'm hopeful
And
that won't happen.
And that's why Washington Watch is here, to shine light on the truth. And that's why we have folks like you on the program. Vicky Hartzler, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Great to be here. Thank you.